Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this prayerful pause of the pastor today. My hair's a little flat. Not sure what that's about. Oh, well. What you see is what you get. I have two streams of thought going through me today, through my whole being, actually, and I rarely do I want to get political here, so I'm not trying to approach this as politics one side versus the other, but as patriotism. That's one of them. Recently, a bunch of texts and tweets and emails and things are being made public from the January 6th committee. They're very disturbing to me. How our elected officials would think that it would be all right to do things differently than they have been done for 200 plus years in terms of reporting the votes and taking away privilege of the franchise of voting. Just the sheer gall that they think they have the right or that they can be smart enough to do that. So what if you're smart enough? Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. Learned that one a long time ago in my life. I think I was, 8 or 9. Makes me wonder what was missing in their lives that they didn't learn that. But anyway, just kind of hold that in abeyance for a minute, because the other stream that's going through my mind has to do with Mary. The Big Mary, BVM, the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Mother of Jesus. We don't spend a lot of time on her in Protestant churches usually, which I think we are the poorer for. I think that it would help us a lot if we were to study her and maybe get into a little Mariology sometimes, but that's another story. Been thinking about her and her response to the angel. That's part of the Magnificat, where she says, "May it be as you wish. May I be used. Just put me where you want me, show me what to do," kind of thing. Thinking about that and how that was a form of obeying God. I've been working with a Celtic Advent series, and they don't look at the 4 things that we do for each week in Advent, which for us is, of course, hope, love, joy, and peace. Instead, theirs have to do with the breath of heaven, or the breath of God, light. This third one is obedience. I look at that word. How do you respond to that word, obedience, or obey? We struck it from the marriage vows for the most part, unless someone requests it, years ago. So where are you with the word obey? I've been thinking a lot about this. I've been thinking about how if I choose to follow someone, to follow their direction, that has a different feeling to me than being told you must obey. Or the expectation is that we will obey God's commandments. I mean, of course it is. That expectation is there, but maybe it's just my personality type, like on the Enneagram, but boy, that word obey can be a stumbling block for me, and I'm wondering if it can be for you as well. However, when I look at it in terms of saying surrender, I surrender myself to God. I really want to do what you want me to do. I choose to obey you, not that I'm being made to. I think that's part of the Protestant understanding of the job of the Spirit and how we respond. We don't believe that God guilts us into doing things, or that God necessarily judges us. Well, there's a branch of Protestantism that does, but I'm not part of that. Instead, it's that God does these miraculous, wonderful things in our lives. And as a result, we are changed, and we just can't help but fall in love with God and want to do what God wants us to do. That's a very different sense of obeying, I think, than being told As a child, for instance, you must obey. And I marvel at Mary, because she adopted that former. I don't think she was part of the latter at all. I think she was, yes, may it be as thou hast said. Use me as you will. May your will be done. And Jesus, same thing in Gethsemane. Fight, fight, fight. Could it be this? I don't want to do that. Like most of us do. But then he says, but ultimately, thy will, not mine, be done. So it takes some of us longer to get to that point than it does others. Some of us kind of like Mary, jump right into it and say, yeah, okay, whatever you say. The rest of us are like, but, all right. Anyway, that concept, that idea, image of obeying, of voluntarily following someone else, of choosing to supplicate, maybe that's too strong a word, myself, certainly subordinate myself to God's will. I look at that in terms of what these elected officials have done. And at first, my first response was to say, what's the matter with them? They are just too haughty. They are too full of themselves. They're too conceited. They're too thinking, because I can, I should. They're not willing to subjugate themselves to the will of God. But then it really, really hit me that I think an awful lot of people today, not just in this country it happens to be toward one individual who shall remain unnamed, but the same thing is happening around the world with other people choosing that posture of obedience, if you will, embracing it for probably all the right reasons, but what they are subjugating themselves to is wrong. It's wrong. And how do we know? Because it is contrary to the teachings of Jesus. The things that tyrannical despots or autocrats do and teach and stand for are contrary to the will and teachings of Jesus. And so we can't equate the two, and yet many people do. And when I read now about beware of false gods or false prophets, boy, it's looming large to me what's going on in our world today, especially in our country. I mean, I'm just very aware of that. And I don't really know what to do about that, except to affirm who it is that I choose to obey and to listen to and to follow and to be led by, to be taught by. And this is the season, I think, for us to consider those things and to kind of re-up. It's our chance to re-up and say, yep, I'm on board with Jesus. I'm on board with following the star. I'm on board with Mary saying yes to God. I'm on board with Joseph listening to angels and believing what his betrothed says to him, even though it might not make sense. Even those friends might ridicule him. I'm on board. And I guess the question for all of us today is less maybe about obedience, because we'll all define that whatever way we want to define it. But maybe it's more, are you on board? What part of this whole story, this Christian life, this message, this rhythm of our lives that take us from Advent into Christmas and then ultimately into Lent and into Easter and into Pentecost, this rhythm of our year, what part are you on board with? What part do you choose to believe and choose to follow? Because if we're doing that, we don't have room for all this other stuff. I don't have time or energy or interest or the ability to become a supplicant to someone else. Because My heart is already taken by Christ. And for those who are following someone else, I pray for them that they may come to know the risen Christ. And can it happen? Of course it can happen. Look at Saul and Paul. Of course it can happen. It happens in our own lives every day on smaller levels. Why not big ones? So pray for people. All right. I guess that's it. Maybe a little rambling. I hope you could follow that. And that it gives you something to think about during the day today. Thanks for joining me for this prayerful pause with the pastor when we carve out time to think of something greater than ourselves and hopefully be disturbed by it a little bit. I'm Pastor Deb Swift with South Presbyterian Church in Rochester, New York, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, God bless, take care, and bye for now.